We pick up where we left off, jumping in the deep end and not leaving any stone unturned, whilst finding each step of the way clear evidence of subterfuge to allow fifth generation technology to roll out unabated in our very own communities, irrespective of public consultation and concern for scientific or medical analysis. When we consider today that most people, especially children, have developed very short attention spans, especially concerning technologies and news information, the desire for increased latency in the transfer of data and the ability to download large files is seen as lifeblood giving. So a huge mechanism to sell the smart house Internet of Things concept to the masses. Whilst the increase in sedentary lifestyles has seen a hike in obesity rates in tandem, it has led us to the desire for someone or something else to carry out the most basic of tasks for us so we can entertain ourselves in our consumerist indulgences. Consequently, is it any wonder 5G exponents are selling it as a means to a life wrapped in cotton wool, where we no longer have to lift a finger to engage in mundane activities or even think for ourselves? Systems to regulate the turning on and off of lights, locking and unlocking doors, and adjusting the heat on the thermostat at the touch of a button. Then on another level, even telling you when and how much to eat, and even cook our food for us. Mind mapping and the power of suggestion is not a new concept, and even going back to World War II with Nazi Germany, we see this used to focus the people under one agenda, even if the true motives are immoral and cruel. Science realizes that the same part of the brain that is stimulated by sugar, narcotics, and shopping addictions, to name but a few, is in tandem with the smartphone. And this small screen addiction is closely related and similar with all gadgets and devices we see today. All of these addictions lead to dopamine release, which is a feel-good hormone, encouraging neurons to get excited in the brain so we experience pleasure. The constant release of dopamine that occurs from using applications that have been designed to be addictive will, over time, downregulate the dopamine receptor sites in the brain to protect our neurons from severe damage, but this will rob us of satisfaction, leaving us feeling empty and void. Ultimately, we need to generate more dopamine to stay in the same state of happiness, and therefore we need more exposure and more intense experiences, which lead us down a very slippery slope. The fewer receptors we have to occupy our brains results in us needing a bigger rush until you are taking a huge hit to get almost nothing. Marketers seem to recognize this fact, and so we become putty in their hands for the latest accessory or gadget and social media application. And in this instance, we end up stopping from reflecting upon the true picture concerning issues such as 5G. Dr. Robert H. Lustig, professor of pediatric endocrinology at the University of California in San Francisco, speaking about the addictive power of technology, stated, "It's not a drug, but it might as well be. It works the same way, and it has the same results." He emphasizes the point that when want becomes need, we have already moved into the realm of addiction. Likewise, when we observe our children being vulnerable to the likes of subliminal messaging in advertising on TV, is this not a criminal offense to attack our subconscious? And especially with technology, when we know the health and safety implications from 5G. The drive for short-term pleasure or immediate self-fulfillment comes at the cost of contentment, which is associated with serotonin levels. This chemical inhibitor of receptors, which leads to tranquility and being in balance or zen-like. This is in stark contrast to chasing the dopamine rush, which is excitatory. Remarkably, the dopamine down-regulates serotonin levels, depriving us ultimately of contentment, which comes with the ultimate cost. In other words, the more pleasure you seek, the more unhappy you get. This is a shocking discovery and ultimately shows if we continue to pursue a life of hedonism and selfish desires, we shall be pawns in the hands of those dictating the agenda to us today. Forewarned is truly forearmed in this critical situation, and caution must be applied.
The cell phone, smartphone has been hijacked by children, and they are very susceptible to this addiction. And psychiatrists have written that when you try and limit a child's cell phone use or take one off, one psychiatrist said that the child said to the parents, and published this in Scientific American Mind, the child said to the parents, and meant it a girl, teenage girl, "If you so much as touch my cell phone, I will kill you both in your sleep." Another girl punched her mother in the face that tried to take the cell phone. And this is where children are. They are really addicted. So it's like giving children cigarettes and alcohol and marijuana and saying, enjoy yourself for as many years to get you hooked. Now we're going to take them away.
I want your phone or a no marrying game. It's one or the other.
Please, don't do anything.
No.
Please, Mom.
I want your phone.
Please, Mom.
No.
Do anything. Mom will do anything, please. I'll clean the whole house, please. No, I don't do anything.
No. What is a posh?
A posh is what your ass got now. You don't have an iPod, you got an iPosh. Your ass don't know how to act in class. So, no more Instagram, no more tweeting, no more selfies. No, it's not a joke. Your grades are a joke. That's your new phone. Really?
You got it, bro.
A 10th grader admitted today in court that he killed his parents because he was angry over routine punishments like taking away his iPod.
Vincent Parker, an honor roll student and artist at Norview High School, told police he just got mad and went off. A week before Christmas, he killed both his parents by hacking at them with knives and bashing them with a baseball bat and a crowbar. He told investigators he was fed up with what seemed like routine discipline for a teenager. "I just remember getting mad," he told them. "It's all from my dad. All this stuff like my dad taking away my iPod and stuff."
It might seem hard to believe, but electromagnetic frequency blackout is already guaranteed by law in the United States. In 1996, President Clinton signed the Telecommunications Act into law. Section 704 of the TCA states no health or environmental concern can intervene with the placement of telecom equipment. So local councils have no right to protect the people because if they reject planning permission due to health risks, Section 704 deems wireless industry can sue them. Norm Ulster, in his report, The Center of Ethics, claims succinctly that Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC, is the most captured agency in Washington, D.C. It acts more as a cheerleader than a regulator. It's especially true with 5G safety concerns and misleading information. So is this not akin to the fox guarding the henhouse? Federal laws in the USA make it illegal in some cases to speak of health effects from cell phone towers and EMF radiation. No state or local government, or instrumentality thereof, may regulate the placement, construction, and modification of personal wireless service facilities. If the government decides there is a significant risk, then there can be no dispute if they erect masts in your neighborhood. These are based on industry-sponsored studies, like big tobacco with cigarettes. Once again, across the pond in the UK, the law is paramount, and the council should declare due care and attention to the public according to the Human Rights Act of 1998, as well as the Health and Safety Act in 1974. Simply put, the council has a legal duty of care to protect the well-being of its citizens if there is a known risk to health. Environmental risk assessments should be carried out and precautionary steps taken. Yet, such untested methods are considered unsafe today by municipalities including Rome, Brussels, and now Geneva. How can the central government be showing due care and attention when they declared just over 6 months ago there was zero health risk associated with 5G? Insurance companies are not fooled, and they are not selling product liability to cover cell radiation from this technology. Lloyd's of London told insurance companies not to insure wireless companies to prevent lawsuits.
Lloyd's is actually the only insurance market in the world. People think of Lloyd's sometimes as some kind of company, insurance company. It isn't, it's a market. It is the global hub for specialist insurance and reinsurance. It is mainly commercial insurance, it's catastrophe insurance, it's business-to-business insurance, and then it's a whole range of specialist lines. We've been going for 328 years. It started with marine cargo and ships, went through all the industrial revolution, evolution of machinery, motor cars, aeroplanes, satellites, and now, of course, we pride ourselves in innovation in terms of covering new types of risk like cyber risk or drones, automated vehicles, and so on.
This is a company with a huge portfolio that usually takes on risks no one else will touch. And interestingly, this was added as an endorsement to renewal policies, as per this statement. The electromagnetic fields exclusion is a general insurance exclusion and is applied across the market as standard. The purpose of the exclusion is to exclude cover for illnesses caused by continuous long-term non-ionizing radiation exposure, i.e. through mobile phone usage. Many insurers declare EMF risks as on the same level of risk as asbestos, smoke inhalation, and chemicals. To add protection in most cases, you'll need to add pollution liability or enhancement coverage.
If that is the case, then as with the runoff claims on asbestos, the insurance industry may be finding that there is an issue that they're concerned about. Certainly, I understand that some syndicates of Lloyd's of London have put electromagnetic fields as a general exclusion insurance, and that Swiss Re, the major insurance company, have said this is an emerging major risk on the next over the 10-year view.
Swiss Re Sonar is the world's second largest reinsurance company based in Zurich. Its 2013 report stipulated from emerging risks insights that EMF could be a risk for the insurance industry. They said if a direct link between EMF and human health problems were established, it would open doors for new claims and could ultimately lead to large losses under product liability covers. Liability rates would likely rise. So it's no wonder that Lloyd's of London excludes any liability coverage for claims directly or indirectly arising out of or resulting from or contributed to by electromagnetic fields, radiation, electromagnetism, radio waves, or noise. This tacitly passes the buck and means that school officials likewise could be personally liable for exposing children and staff to microwave radiation.
Lloyd's of London, which will built its reputation on insuring anything, will not touch. They will not insure any electromagnetic frequency ill effects or harms. And that should tell you something. If it's not insurable, why is it legal?
The German scientist Otto Schumann, in association with Hans Berger, proved inexplicably that our planet Earth has a pulse, and the tension between the Earth and the ionosphere, an electrical frequency that is identical to our alpha waves in our brains, which is revealed from an EEG machine at 7.8 megahertz.
His name was Winifred Otto Schumann. On the day in question, he was teaching his students about the physics of electricity, how a sphere within a sphere can create electrical tension, and subsequently, a frequency. Schumann's class had struggled to understand the subject, so to make it easier, the professor instructed them to imagine the Earth as one sphere and the ionosphere as another. He then asked them to calculate the tension that would exist in between. Having no idea himself, Schumann also began to calculate. Eventually, he arrived at a frequency of approximately 10 Hertz. As incredible as it seemed to Schumann, our planet had a pulse, a measurable frequency that surrounded life on Earth. Although the professor was proud of his find, he didn't see it as a hugely significant one, especially as it was only published in a small science journal, confined to the back pages, under the heading of Schumann resonance. It would take several years, and an incredible twist of fate, before the professor would begin to realise the true importance of Schumann resonance. That twist of fate had begun 30 years earlier, with another German scientist by the name of Hans Berger. Using an EEG machine he had built himself, Berger had made the first ever recording of electrical frequency transmitted by the human brain. It was initially suggested the wave be named after the man who'd discovered it, but Berger, being a modest man, elected for an alphabetical name and called it the alpha wave. Shortly after Professor Schumann's discovery, one of Hans Berger's colleagues, a man named Dr. Ankermüller, happened to stumble upon a bedraggled copy of a small scientific journal. The exact same small scientific journal that Professor Schumann's discovery had been published in several years before. He read the piece several times, shaking his head in disbelief. He realised instantly the magnitude of what was in front of him. The frequency of the alpha waves, recorded by Hans Berger, were almost identical to Schumann resonance. The frequency of the Earth. Dr. Ankermüller immediately contacted Schumann to convince him to investigate further. Schumann agreed and worked alongside one of his students to refine his discovery. They studied in detail how tension is discharged by lightning in the Earth ionosphere cavity. Eventually, they came up with an exact frequency. The pulse of the Earth, Schumann resonance, was exactly 7.83 Hertz. The discovery was remarkable. Schumann resonance wasn't just similar to the alpha waves of the human brain, it was identical. The brain's frequency, which controlled our creativity, our performance, our stress, anxiety, and our immune system, had somehow tuned in to the frequency of the planet. The pulse of the Earth had become the pulse of life itself.
Now, concerning electrosensitivity, if we look at the organisms to determine the presence of life, we always look for electricity. If we see this as an indication of life, then indeed all life is electromagnetically sensitive. So if we are indeed electromagnetic beings, this proves how important it is that we are in tune with the Earth's resonance and magnetic field as well. So are we any doubt vulnerable to man-made frequencies? Our brain's frequency is known to affect our anxiety levels, stress and creativity levels in tandem. Also, our immune systems are in tune to the pulse of the planet, and this indeed is the pulse of life itself.
And it is known to date that women have 13 different circadian resonant frequencies than men. So you could have a lady sitting in a room saying, I'm getting funny hearing, or I'm picking up voices, or I'm getting an irregular heartbeat, or something's going wrong. And the man could be saying, don't be stupid, go and see a doctor.
So what would happen, and what does happen when we distort this frequency and move away from the natural pulse of planet Earth? David Icke, a key researcher, has noted that moods through different frequency bands could therefore logically influence our psyche. Whilst, as we stated, the discovery of the new protein called cryptochrome in the 1990s shows how all life, birds and insects, are reliant on electromagnetism for life. And this molecule even controls your circadian clock and your light and dark cycle. And do you believe that that is a significant factor in this, that there is a resonance of the planet and that we should be in tune with that?
Yes, which I would refer to as the circadian frequencies, and which we actually get from Mother Earth, and we normally get in sync with Mother Earth because we're barefoot, but we're not anymore. We're very, very well insulated, and we absorb electrical energy, and we rarely dissipate it. We should really go barefoot or put our feet in the ocean on a regular basis.
Evidently, 5G acts as a human body antennae that interacts with our frequency, receiving and transmitting information. Our brain processes information electrically, and our DNA also receives and transmits information. If we are inherently electromagnetic organisms, when our fields are in harmony, we have health, both psychological and physical well-being. So evidently, these frequencies interact with your cellular structure in a band of frequencies like a broadcast message, carrying information within a frequency range that our brains can decode. How can we develop harmoniously in an atmosphere permeated on all sides by currents and radiation? Will we understand the news? Will this not dampen down our intelligence? And aren't the effects already being realized today? Don't you notice that people struggle to understand simple matters? Surely then this can influence people's perception by simply changing the frequency. Could this be linked to disease and disharmony? You have heard the phrase, you could cut the atmosphere with a knife. David Icke states they have even worked out frequencies of emotional states which can be easily adjusted to, with rage or hate versus love mapped out, leading to conflict, aggression, and changing the field energy in the room. In response, people will not realise why they feel in a certain way, but they do feel it. They could be triggered by an event like someone being arrested, and this could cause people acting out of character and leading to mass riot. In modern warfare, this is a key weapon to break down the spirit of the enemy and to get troops to put weapons down. He noted this about radio technology, which is of far lesser significance than today's blanket EMF technology. So how disturbing is this for our future?
His name was Rutger Weaver, an acclaimed scientist from the Max Planck Institute. In the early 1960s, the professor constructed an underground bunker in order to examine the circadian rhythms of man. The circadian rhythm is the day-night cycle that is engraved into all life. Over a 30-year period, the professor conducted experiments in which student volunteers would spend several weeks at a time living in the bunker, completely shielded from the natural resonances of the Earth. In his results, Weaver noted some astonishing findings. He discovered that when Schumann resonance was filtered out of the bunker, the students' physical and mental health would suffer.
He took students down there. He didn't trust to do it with ill or old people. He took young students down there because he knew, Weaver knew that there would be an effect. So obviously underground you don't have Schumann resonance. You only have the transverse magnetic fields from in the earth. So by putting them underground, they started feeling sick, having headaches. Their circadian rhythm was completely upset. The interesting thing was when he just introduced the 7.8 hertz frequency with a magnetic pulse generator, that immediately stopped.
So human health and life itself is associated with the natural frequency of the planet, and therefore critically aligned in a delicate relationship and bond. Is it any wonder that many humans are susceptible to epileptic seizures? It was revealed how in Japan, children watching cartoons were subjected to pulsating lights that caused seizures in some and made others very sick. Alistair Phillips from UK Powerwatch said that over the last 25 years, the electromagnetic fields in our atmosphere have changed beyond recognition. The elite power brokers today require that we have 100% 5G. Therefore, to operate this, they will need a drastic culling of trees. Trees that have foliage are being removed as 5G does not travel so well through organic material, especially as its effects are dissipated in the rain. Whilst we see trees not being culled are actually exhibiting symptoms associated with disease, yet only when the 5G technology is installed in close environs.
Save me.
In a condition known as bleeding, the bark falls off in strips and in many irregular patches.
This is the stressor, right? The microwave radiation stressing these trees. Look,
yeah,
they're bleeding. This is a breakdown of the fabric of the tree. This isn't the winter. Look.
This is the summer. This is the height of the summer. When you've had a lot of rain in the area.
A lot of rain, very damp.
Everything else is green.
If you look through the canopy, the tree canopy is sparse. Yeah. You can see through that. You would never be able to see through that because the radiation's coming in off those transmitters. Yeah. It gets on the leaves, and then the leaves and the trees take it.
So it dissipates through because they're trying to ground the energy.
They're trying to ground the energy, and they're getting that much. See the size of that tree. They're taking more energy to ground. Obviously, these are the things that are keeping us alive at the minute, but the councils across the country, including Sheffield, they want to chop all the trees down. And they want to chop them down for a couple of reasons. They don't want people to see that.
Yeah, because they're going to wonder what's happening to them if it's happening to
They don't want to see what's happening to the leaves. Yeah. So if they take the tree down, no evidence.
Yeah.
Natural radiation is very powerful, however, it's immersive. The analogy for this, it's like a jackhammer. Because they're square waves, so you've actually got that energy input like that, right? And what it does, it shatters the cell.
But how do you know this? Is this from your military background?
No, that's all science. If any science, the science on lighting systems, anyone just needs to go and look at pulse modulation or look at light systems. AMA, ANSI's, Public Health England have all warned about the pulse modulation, what's called flicker, from these type of lights. And they are hazardous, they are hazard and lethal, and especially to children.
Because obviously the absorption rate is much higher, and when children are at their developing age, they're absolutely mingling with stem cells, while they sort themselves out to promote their growth. They are more at risk. Their blood-brain barrier is almost non-existent. I'm just so concerned.
This is illegal. This is a human rights crime.
If the number of trees is declining, carbon dioxide will not be taken out of the atmosphere, and the knock-on effect is going to be beyond our initial thoughts. Remarkably, coccolithophores, which prevail in the seas, cannot cope with this and start to die off, and they are vital to our ecosystem as they produce a byproduct known as dimethyl sulfide, which drifts into the atmosphere and is the only substance known for cloud formation. So if we destroy the trees, there will be less clouds, leading to climatic changes and more potential droughts. People underestimate the benefit of trees. Yet science teaches us how they communicate via roots with one another and even feed one another. They are able to control organisms in the soil, remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and in turn, even fish derive 70% of their DNA from the trees through the food web. So if we destroy the trees, the fish and the ground soil will be impacted in tandem. In March 2018, the British paper The Sun ran a story with a headline, 5G Tree Threat. New 5G phone system could face reception problems from trees with too many leaves. Sheffield's council's relationship with mobile phone O2 no doubt is linked to this. How strange a company whose acronym is for life-giving oxygen is seeking means to eradicate trees in our environs. Network Rail is already in process of culling 10.9 million trees in this area, whilst Gateshead have cut back hard, and thousands of mature trees in the urban streets, including chestnuts, elms, have been targeted. Are we not entitled to live in a green environment with clean air, giving us pure oxygen? The Victorians planted trees to stop sickness of the workforce in the industrial era, which led to greater biodiversity, and in tandem parks were developed, and an improvement in the water quality was noted, as CO2 helps to filtrate the nitrates in the soil. Yet today, the likes of Bristol CBD has been turned into a concrete jungle. And as reported in the Science of the Total Environment, Waldman Selsom stated, radio frequency radiation injures trees around mobile phone base stations.
As far as I'm concerned, 5G frequency emissions are an environmental pollutant.
4G is emitting more than all of aviation on its own. Just launching and managing these apparent 20,000 low-orbit 5G satellites will emit more than all the cars on the planet, just on their own, never mind the thousands of trees that have already been cut down, mature city trees, which are vital, not just Sheffield, all over the place, which are vital for these urban environments.
We will see a big problem. There's a very elegant experiment of putting ants, a colony of ants, near a Wi-Fi router, near a mobile phone or near a laptop. And when these devices were off, the ants had no problem. And when these devices were on, the ants were unable to navigate correctly, they couldn't find food and they died. So I suppose in military parlance, what's happening is that our navigation systems are being jammed, or the navigation systems of insects and possibly other animals.
Just one point in question reveals the significant sensitivity of all life forms to disruptions in magnetic fields caused by 5G technology. Upon the introduction of a radar device at an airport, a remarkable discovery was made. Aphids were seen to tense up every few seconds and perform a dance at regular intervals of time. Further investigation revealed this activity coincided with the rotation of the radar device at the airport at a distance of some 14 miles away. In November the 26th, 2018, more evidence sprung forth from a certain park in The Hague, where more than 150 starlings have fallen dead from the trees in a short space of time. Upon inspections by a laboratory bioveterinary staff, autopsies revealed only internal bleeding and neither signs of poisoning or disease, whilst the animals do not appear emaciated. Radio frequency radiation was tested in the area, with the mast in question located about 400 meters from where the starlings have fallen dead. There was a peak frequency of 7.40 gigahertz, which corresponds to a wavelength of 4.05 centimeters, and this wavelength is on the same order of magnitude as the size of the starlings. And this may be important because of the possible resonance effects.
Look around you, no small birds. You come here a couple of years ago, you'd had loads of little birds, sparrows, all gone, all annihilated. That in itself is an environmental reckless crime.
Bees and the normal sort of irritating insects, there seems to be a lack of them.
The bees, pollinators, all gone, no moths, everything.
Yes.
With the wasps are gone. There's no wasps in the bins, there's no wasps in the bins, there's nothing.
I mean, food everywhere in the summertime, they should be everywhere.
Everywhere, so that,
Whilst in the UK, bees, dragonfly populations have collapsed, destroyed by the so-called electrosmog. All complex organisms rely on the magnetic field of the Earth to survive, and so if we disturb these, is there any wonder the balance is lost? How does this affect the food chains? Would we be able to get a reliable source of nuts and fruits and vegetables? In the 2006, bee colonies began to collapse despite seemingly being healthy and strong. Some countries reported up to 70% losses of hives, and the decline occurred worldwide.
We do know that bees are sensitive to magnetic fields. We know that within their bodies they contain particles of magnetite, and laboratory studies have shown that they are indeed sensitive to magnetic fields, and you can demonstrate in laboratory that if you artificially create a magnetic field, you can control the way that they build their comb, and it seems logical that bees are using magnetic fields in navigation.
The delicate balance of life on Earth is perfectly illustrated by reliance on bees and their pollination of plants. It's hypothesized that without bees, life wouldn't stand much of a chance.
Insect pollination is needed for really all the things that make eating interesting. So all the fruits, the nuts, and things like that all require insect pollination, and bees are the most important group of pollinators.
Colony collapse disorder has affected hives all around the world, with some countries reporting losses of up to 70%. A variety of reasons have been offered as to its cause, but none of them have been able to conclusively explain why all of a sudden bees don't return to their hives. Apart from one, a sensational piece of research by Joseph Kuhn and his team. In an experiment, the doctor worked with 8 beehives and placed a regular home deck phone inside half of them. The scientists then monitored if the presence of a deck phone would affect the way that bees returned to their hive. The results were astonishing. In the hives where no deck phone was present, the bees returned at a normal rate. But in the hives which contained a deck phone, the bees hardly returned at all. In one hive containing a deck phone, not a single bee returned. To fully understand the relevance of Dr. Kuhn's experiment, we must first understand how a deck phone works. The reason you are able to walk around your home talking on your deck phone is because the base station of the deck phone sends electromagnetic frequency waves called microwaves to the handset. This is exactly the same way that a mobile phone mast communicates with a mobile phone. A deck phone is basically a miniature version of a mobile phone mast.
So if bees are affected by a single phone device and we have 4G around the world, then what does this declare about the mass and the potential risks of 5G?
The field effects that are being used in the pulsations are not known naturally. The power of the transmissions is really quite high. Some of the transmissions that we're experiencing now are 10 to the power of 18 times the background that our biology was adapted for. So that's many orders of magnitude that are causing potential problems. And I think rather than presuming no harm, keeping our fingers crossed and just hoping, we should probably wake up and say, we have a problem. Are we going to do anything about it, or is it society's choice to not do something about it? But it would be nice if society had that choice.
Smart lives, houses and urban networks are being promoted by the authorities and mass media in the apparent offering us a whole new world of interactive experiences and access to commodities at the turn of a switch or device. An escapist consumerist nirvana where all your materialist fantasies can be realized, from self-driving cars to TVs that tell you when you're running low on beer or eggs. A world where the merging of virtual reality with our world becomes normality. But who and what is watching over our every move? And what is their true intention behind this? Is it just about commercial enterprise or something far more sinister? The propagandists are selling the concept of you becoming a co-creator and self-empowered to control and monitor your health, budget and domestic responsibilities through such devices and applications. Yet who is pulling the strings behind this agenda? We are taught by science that this technology works on the same parts of our brain linked to dopamine release, which commonly leads to dependency and addictive behaviors. Is this not really, as Mark Steele stipulated, smart, secret militarized armaments in residential technology, a platform to arm the state apparatus in spying, an insidious plot using a silent weapon to dumb down a generation and engender disease and disharmony? If this is not the case, then why is a legal system in the USA, in cahoots with the telecoms industry, so keen to create a blackout to stop any EMF safety debate before rollout when risks are significant and apparent? And why are the big players in insurance refusing to take on the liability? We are all primarily bioelectrical sensitive beings, and fifth generation technology acts as an antennae to our body. How can this not distort our harmony and balance, as we know from the Schumann resonance that any influence on our EMF fields will cause irreversible harm to our cellular structure? For those of us still in denial, unable to face the horsemen of the apocalypse, death, famine, war and conquest, the observable results in our natural world should suffice to reawaken the spirit of truth within. When all bioorganisms rely on magnetic fields to enable their antennae to guide them to perform daily tasks, how can they survive when disrupted? Yet without these organisms, our lives are never the same again. Are we truly civilized? Fundamentally, law still requires the people's consultation and sufficient testing. Why are we not demanding our basic human rights? 5G is a Trojan horse we have decided to invite into our family homes, and in future episodes we promise to reveal how we must disarm this ticking time bomb before it unleashes its irreversible power upon us.